It's time now for Scoop, our weekly conversation on international media and the political and economic headwinds confronting the industry. We look at who shapes a narrative, explore journalistic ethics, and ask the reporters the difficult questions. With trust in the press at a nadir, it's a critical eye on a critical profession. This month, Stephen Colbert, the host of The Late Show, taped an interview with Texas State Representative James Talarico, a popular, well-funded Democrat running for the U.S. Senate in November's midterm elections. But the interview never aired, at least not on TV. Colbert claimed his employer, CBS, blocked the interview from playing during the live broadcast, citing the FCC's equal time rule.
You might have heard of this thing called the equal time rule, okay? It's an old FCC rule that applies only to radio and broadcast television, not cable or streaming, that says if a show has a candidate on during an election, they have to have all that candidate's opponents on as well. There's long been an exception for this rule, an exception for news interviews and talk show interviews with politicians. On January 21st of this year, a letter was released by FCC chairman and smug bowling pin Brendan Carr. Carr said he was thinking about dropping the exception for talk shows because he said some of them were motivated by partisan purposes. Sir, you're chairman of the FCC, so FCCU. Because I think you are motivated by partisan purposes yourself.
The plan might have backfired. Colbert and his team instead posted that interview on YouTube, a platform where FCC rules do not apply. It's already been viewed over 8 million times. Take a look.
It's not the first time you've caused some drama. FCC opening probe into The View after appearance by Talarico. Do you mean to cause trouble?
I think that Donald Trump is worried that we're about to flip Texas. This is the party that ran against cancel culture, and now they're trying to control what we watch, what we say, what we read. And this is the most dangerous kind of cancel culture, the kind that comes from the top. They went after The View because I went on there. They went after Jimmy Kimmel for telling a joke they didn't like. They went after you for telling the truth about Paramount's bribe to Donald Trump.
Since then, CBS and Colbert have traded blame, going back and forth over the details of what happened. Now, recently, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr said he did not see a reason to give talk radio stations, a longtime bastion of conservative voices, the same warning he's delivered to late night and daytime TV. In the meantime, Carr appeared on Fox and called legacy media fake news.
It's why people have more trust and faith in gas station sushi today than they do in the legacy news media. And again, we're going to hold broadcasters accountable. The days that these legacy media broadcasters get to decide what we can say, what we can think, who we can vote for are over.
CNN's media reporter Brian Stelter said this was all about power, using regulatory power to reshape the culture.
Growing up, Johnny Carson, Jay Leno were relaxing shows to watch at the end of the day. But now, late-night comics are much more provocative, much more political, and for the past decade, very staunchly anti-Trump. In the words of one famous TV host recently, quote, "We need less government regulation and more freedom. Let the American people decide where to get their information from without any government interference." You want to know who said that, Caitlin? A little guy named Sean Hannity, because he doesn't want to see these equal time rules applied to conservative talk radio. So far, Carr is saying he's focused on TV, not radio. But technically, these rules apply to the broadcast airwaves of radio as well. And you have to wonder if a Democratic president might want to use these equal time rules for the radio in the future.
Well, for more, we can speak to Alex Weprin, a senior editor at The Hollywood Reporter. Hello to you, Alex. Thank you for speaking to Scoop. I just want to get your take. There's been a lot of back and forth between CBS and Colbert on this. Is it black and white about which side is right, or is it a matter of perspective?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a little complex and a little bit nuanced, but basically, CBS decided that they didn't want to air this segment on TV because they were worried about FCC regulations. So some people said that the FCC censored this segment. That's not quite right, but the truth is CBS basically self-censored because of concerns about what the FCC could do.
Yeah, and that's the worrying bit here. If that's the case, this is another example of a media company avoiding a legal fight with this administration, even if it could or should win, because many executives just say it isn't worth it.
Yeah, I mean, and look, the FCC does have clear regulatory authority over broadcast networks like CBS, so there's no question about that. The FCC has also been under Brendan Carr very aggressive in pursuing investigations into U.S. networks. So, like, they're investigating DEI practices, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion practices at NBC and Disney. They, of course, have an open investigation into The View, which is a daytime talk show that frequently touches on political issues for the same reason that the CBS was concerned about Colbert. So I think there's reason to be concerned.
Yeah, and in regards to what he's doing with this equal time rule, is he returning it to the way things were before, or is he leveling the playing field between Democrats and Republicans, or is it something nefarious?
In my lifetime, I've never seen anything like this. So, basically, the way the equal time rule works is that um, there's an exemption for political candidates for bona fide news programs and interviews. The idea is if it's an entertainment program and you give free time to a candidate, yes, that program has to give equal time to an opposing candidate. We saw that in 2024 with Saturday Night Live. When they put Kamala Harris on for a segment, they actually gave President Trump equal time in commercials elsewhere on the network. But in my lifetime, I've never seen a case where talk shows like Stephen Colbert's show or The View have been targeted in this equal time rule because they've been seen as bona fide news. They've been seen as doing news-making interviews with politicians and not pure entertainment programs in that regard.
And that's not the only reason why CBS is in the news. One of America's best known, most respected journalists announced he was stepping away from 60 Minutes. That's Anderson Cooper, who had been there for nearly 2 decades. How much of a blow is that to the program?
Yeah, it's a real serious blow. 60 Minutes is the flagship news program of CBS News, and Anderson Cooper is arguably the most famous face on that program. He obviously also is an anchor at CNN, where he hosts a primetime show. So I think that is still his main job. But there's no question that he viewed 60 Minutes as kind of a really important part of what he did and something that reached a lot more people than his cable news program would. So, I heard that CBS executives were kind of surprised by the decision. They were in talks for a new contract, and he walked away relatively last minute. And so I think it says a lot about what Anderson, sees as kind of the future of CBS News and where he sees that going.
Right, and just to underscore that, Cooper, as we're saying, he wanted to spend more time with his family. Status is Oliver Darcy reporting that he was uneasy with this rightward direction of CBS News has taken under editor-in-chief Barry Weiss and new owner David Ellison. What are some of the examples of that sort of conservative shift we've been seeing at CBS?
Yeah, I mean, Mulberry unveiled the new editor-in-chief of CBS News. She unveiled kind of a sweeping vision last month, and a lot of it, frankly, is very similar to what we see with, more conservative or heterodox podcasts. She announced a lineup of new contributors, many of whom, have kind of interesting takes on different issues like medical issues and so on. So it's more about, it seems to be bringing in voices that are not typically found on broadcast news divisions to lend their voices to CBS programming. It's still not entirely clear what it's going to look like because she hasn't really executed on that vision yet, but that is what she claims to be doing.
And in the meantime, Cooperson's other employer, CNN, could also perhaps become part of the Ellison media empire in the future?
Yeah, so I mean, CNN is part of Warner Brothers Discovery, a large, U.S. media conglomerate, and Warner Brothers Discovery is in the process of selling itself. They have a deal to sell themselves to Netflix, which has raised a lot of antitrust concerns around streaming. But Paramount, which owns CBS News, also wants to buy it. And if they are successful in kind of prying it away from Netflix, which is possible, then yes, the expectation is that CNN and CBS News would be combined or merged in some way, likely under Barry.
Alex, we're still not done with CBS's bad week. I'm not sure if you saw this, but I'm guessing so. CBS News producer recently resigned amid what she called a culture of fear and uncertainty. In her farewell note, Alicia Hasty said, quote, "Stories may instead be evaluated not just on their journalistic merit, but on whether they conform to a shifting set of ideological expectations, a dynamic that pressures producers and reporters to self-censor or avoid challenging narratives that might trigger backlash or unfavorable headlines." How common is that feeling among staff?
Yeah, it does sound unfortunately quite prevalent. Look, I think people understand that when there is new leadership, changes will happen. I don't think that's unusual. What's unusual here is that it seems to be an ideological shift. You know, Barry wants to change the tone and tenor and ideology in some ways of the programming of CBS News. And I think for a lot of staffers, especially some that have been there for a while, it's a very jarring change and one they may not be comfortable with. That's not universal, of course. There are some CBS News staffers that are kind of willing to change and adapt. But yes, it is quite prevalent among many CBS News staffers.
Yeah, and I'm just wondering. Last year we saw Bill Owens, the longtime producer of 60 Minutes, he resigned. CBS News Standards and Practices chief Claudia Milne, she also left. There was a co-anchor from CBS News that also left. So many of these departures. I mean, there's new leadership, there's new ownership. Is this standard when there's that much of a shakeup, or is this something else? And what does it mean for the future?
This is more of a shakeup than we normally see. Again, it's not unusual for some changes to happen whenever there's new leadership. I think people understand that. But there's a lot. This is a seismic shift inside CBS News. These are not small changes. Changing the tone and tenor, seeing really high-level departures like Anderson Cooper and Bill Owens. These are major changes at CBS, and I think that it portends a future that is very different than the past. And while we still don't know exactly what it's going to look like or feel like or sound like, you can kind of infer from what Barry has said that it's going to look quite different than what it has in the past.
I'm wondering if you could give us a historical perspective. Has there ever at a time, at least in recent history, been such a disconnect between the way media executives in America might be sort of playing this political game and the way reporters and editors need to do their job on the ground?
No, I mean, this is a really unique time in American politics and news right now. You see it at the Washington Post, you see it at CBS News, you see it pretty much across the board, where there is a conflict between many of the journalists doing the work and many of the executives that own and owners of these media companies that have a different perspective and point of view. And that conflict is kind of playing out in public in ways that we haven't really seen before. So it's a really interesting and unique time. As someone who covers it, it's certainly a fascinating one.
All right, Alex, thank you so much for your time. Alex Weprin from The Hollywood Reporter. And that brings us to our quote of the week. It's from Salon's Sophia Tesfaye. She wrote, quote, "What we are watching is a systematic dismantling of institutional independence in real time at one of the most historically significant news and entertainment corporations in America. Stephen Colbert is leaving in May. Anderson Cooper is already gone. What CBS should be asking itself is not how to manage the departure of the people who made it matter, but whether anyone left in the building still believes the mission is worth defending." That's it for this edition of Scoop. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned to France 24.